in fact, in terms of, correct me if I'm wrong, but my sense of things, part of me before that, is Joe was a really loving father.
Yeah.
And Rose, she was like a mother from hell.
Well, I'm not sure she was the mother from hell, but she was the mother from someplace very chilly. And I don't know what that place is exactly, but it was very chilly. I guess that was one of the first revelations to me in researching her childhood at the Kennedy Library and in her private papers. There are all of these letters that Eunice wrote to her mother when her mother was away. And her mother was almost always away and shopping in Paris usually. And dear mommy, I'm so sad you won't be here for the puppet show. Dear mommy, we miss you so much. When are you coming home? Dear mommy, they're all so plaintive. And the other thing that was a revelation is that when you put the chronology together of her travels and of the kids' childhood, you realize this woman that we were told, was the keeper of Catholicism in that house, somehow didn't manage to make it to Kick's first communion or to Joe Jr.'s confirmation. What's up with that? And as I built the story of Eunice's life, I saw that we really had been sold a bill of goods about Rose. And of course we were. Joe was a master of public relations, maybe one of the first political masters of public relations. What did he tell his kids? It doesn't matter who you are, it matters what people think you are. And I have to say, to Eunice's credit, she took that philosophy and she turned it on its head to the benefit of children with intellectual disabilities. You think they're just poor, downtrodden little children? You watch them in this rodent. She changed our perception of the whole population of people by following her father's precept. Not in the way he did, not in the way.
One of the things that's most striking about the book, and it's not something I expected, is that, yeah, you got the archival research, and you talk to the families, but throughout it, it's a thread where you talk to families of intellectually challenged kids. And there is such a vivid sense of how Eunice's work affected the lives of everyday people. My question is, did you intend that going in? Did it just sort of happen that way? I guess several questions. How important was that for you? And how did that add to the experience?
That's a great question. No one's ever asked me that. And I don't think I didn't go into this with any intent. I had no idea what it would look like when it came out. But there was a wonderful woman who was about Eunice's age, who lived in West Hartford, Connecticut. And she had been one of the first of the parents to begin agitating for special education for their children, for recreational programs for their children. In the way of all Kennedys, Eunice didn't get there first. She just got there soon enough after to steal a really good idea and promote it and make something of it. There were parents groups that were popping up all around the country in the 50s who were asking their legislators, asking their communities to do more for these kids. For nothing was being done, essentially, in terms of public expenditures.
One second. I got this for it. I don't know if any of you have read Taylor Branch's Three Magnificent Volumes in the Life of Martin Luther King, but that book, besides the biography of Dr. King, is in effect a shadow history of the civil rights movement. And in a very real sense, this is a shadow history of the movement for civil rights, if that's the right term, for intellectually challenged kids.
I think it is the right term. I think this movement for intellectually disabled and all disabled people was one of the great unrecognized civil rights movement of the second half of the 20th century. Yes, women's rights, yes, civil rights for African Americans, but also we pulled these kids out of the shadows. They became, their civil rights became like a matter of public interest. Well, when I met this woman, Margaret Tadone, down in West Hartford, where she was in an assisted living facility, she had saved everything from her years as an activist. She got elected to the school board, she got elected to the city council, and it was all because of trying to help her Jimmy. She had twins. One of them contracted encephalitis. Doctors wouldn't listen to her. She said, there's something wrong with this child. They wouldn't listen to her. She was an over-anxious mother. And sure enough, as he progressed, he was an infant. When he was taken ill, something might have been done. He could have been helped. But because no one listened to her, this child was severely damaged intellectually. Her story was the story of hundreds of thousands of parents all around this country that were being ignored, especially mothers. And in Eunice's notes, she kept meticulous notes all her life. You can see that one of the things that fuels her is the rage that there was nothing there when her mother tried to help Rosemary, her older sister who was born with intellectual disabilities. And I thought, and I still believe, that Eunice's story is the story of these mothers too. And I wanted them represented in this book. Because when they speak about the struggle, it's not theoretical, it's the struggle they lived through. And I wanted them to have a voice in this letter. And Margaret Tadona went on to serve, maybe under Nixon or Gerald Ford, on the president's panel on what we then call mental retardation, which still existed. The panel still existed, created in 1961 by Eunice Kennedy Shriver, because she would be in the Oval Office saying, God created this panel, and I want the panel.
You sure you want to do the rest of the
I listened to an awful lot of tapes of you.
So I want to go back to that question about liking her. Looking back, and of course, to not like someone is not the same thing as to dislike someone.
Right, very true.
But did you find that not liking, was that intellectually or authorially? Was it liberating or was it limiting?
It wasn't limiting. I mean, I just realized, even at the outset of this, she and I couldn't be more different in some ways. But I couldn't help but see the parallels in our lives.
Could you share some of those?
Well, she was a pain in the ass. You worked with me for 30 years at the Boston Globe. I was an irritant at my workplace. I think it would be fair to say.
But always in a just cause.
Maybe. That depends on where you sat. But I can be angry at what I see as injustice. For a long time at the end of my career at the Globe, I had a column which gave me a piece of real estate where I could say what I really thought. And that was very liberating, but there was a lot of anger in a lot of those columns about the social injustice that I saw around me. And I guess in some ways I feel like I channeled her as I was writing her, because I do relate to that part of her personality. The other parts about liking her, I mean, I don't know what that means really. I know we would want to have dinner together. She was 5'10", and she weighed 109 pounds. I'm trying to get to 5'4", but I'm shrinking as I get old, so that's probably not going to happen. And I haven't seen 109 pounds in a long, long time. So we physically couldn't be more different, and I don't play tennis, and I don't know how to sail, and I grew up in a 3-family house in North Cambridge. So I think we wouldn't hang out together, Eunice and I.
So she wasn't like you?
I don't think she would like me at all, because I love to watch Netflix, and I love to sit on the couch. And she didn't let her kids sit on the couch. And the expression she used with the kids makes absolutely no sense to me or anybody else, but it's called get on to yourself. That's what she would yell at them. If she found them on the couch, get on to yourself. Well, what does that mean? They knew it meant get out, contribute, volunteer, work. And like I said, I like that voice. She wouldn't like me.
We spoke earlier about dealing with the Shrivers in terms of research and getting confidence. Now that the book's been out, how are they responding?
They're pleased with the book, and that was sort of a surprise to me.
Does it matter to you?
It matters to me that they see their mother reflected in there. The book is honest, an honest appraisal of her. It is unvarnished about her negative qualities. But many of those qualities were explained to me by her children. And it's a very different thing sometimes when you see what you said about your mother in an interview with somebody in print. And I was worried that they might want to pull back. And they didn't. I mean, they said you captured her, essentially. So that was really, it's gratifying to know, and not just from them, but from the people that worked with her for 20 or 30 years, who've shown up at book signings in Washington or something, and they will say you nailed her, and that's good to know.
She had a very complicated relationship with feminism, is that fair to say?
Not as complicated, I think, as feminists would say it was. So Mrs. Schreiber, because she was a devout Catholic, and because she was what the kids on the Brandeis campus today would call a social justice warrior, she believed in the sanctity of life, and for her, life began at conception. So she was opposed to abortion, which was, of course, abortion was on the feminist agenda in the 60s and the 70s, leading up to Roe. It was not on her agenda. It was on her agenda not to have that happen. But I find that in some ways incredibly refreshing about Mrs. Schreiber because she was intellectually consistent. The reason that she opposed abortion is the same reason she opposed capital punishment, is the same reason she opposed the incarceration of nonviolent offenders. You know, the same reason she took many of the positions that she took. On abortion specifically, she saw it as an existential threat to a fetus with Down syndrome. And you know what? She was right, because 90% of fetuses with Down syndrome are aborted in this country. You don't have to agree with her. I don't agree with her about whether women should have access to that procedure, but it is consistent with her views about life and her views that those children didn't have enough.
But while that's, and you address this often in the book, the salient issue or divergence between her and standard feminism, perhaps, I guess more I'm getting at is she was so independent, so assertive, so able to get them, so efficacious, which I think all can agree with, feminist things. But she also was Mrs. Schreiber. She also came from a very patriarchal family. Was that more of a tension for her between assertiveness and deference, or did it just kind of work for her?
No, I think one of the things that made her life, her public life, and the work she did easier was she was very entitled. I mean, she grew up very wealthy, and opportunities were closed to her because she was a woman, but other opportunities were there for her because she was an heiress, a very wealthy woman. She had a blind spot about feminism because she didn't see that she was one. She would never have described herself in the 60s or the 70s as a feminist. She wrote essays for the Ladies' Home Journal that when I read them, it made me laugh about, women with their eagerness to go to work and to find their gratification in the public sphere when really the gratification was in the home, by the home fire. Said the woman who doesn't ever come home because she's working and who doesn't know how to cook and who doesn't tell her children she loves them. So she had this fantastical relationship between what motherhood was and the way she practiced motherhood. She was a career woman. She would have said that phrase with derision, career woman, but that's what she was.
If she'd been born 2 generations later, she would have the trajectory to life.
Well, people ask all the time, she would run for office. Maybe Eunice would have been the president. Eunice was entirely too prickly to have ever been elected to any public office because she was incapable of pandering. She said what she thought. And that's one of the reasons I do like her. That's the part of her that I admire so much. I think she would never have learned to edit herself
to being what you need to be a politician in this era or the ones just prior to it. But it was that steeliness in her and, you know, that rough exterior of hers that turned her into a great advocate. There's a lot of ways to practice politics. Not all of them are elected office. She was a political advocate and she got things done.
I want to ask, switch from Eunice back to you, and then perhaps we can take questions from the audience. What are you proudest of the journey? But 30 years as a journalist, you did an awful lot. You won prizes. You've pissed off people, both people you work with and people who were doing bad things out in the world. What are you proudest of?
I don't think there's any single thing. I think I was really lucky to have that platform for a long time, and I guess I'm most grateful for the fact that throughout my career, ordinary people have always opened their door to me and done me the great privilege of inviting me in and telling me their stories and trusted me with their stories, which it's not like great privilege when somebody does it, but it's an enormous risk for the person doing it. And I guess I'm proud that I, over the course of my career in Boston, that I built up enough of trust that people did open those doors. And most of the stories that I heard, because of the kind of reporting I chose to do in my career, were painful stories that are hard to tell. So I guess that.
Good.
Okay.
Perhaps some of you in the audience have questions? Perhaps. I've so exhaustively asked questions. Very good, please.
I have a question about Eunice's relationship with her father. When you do your research, you come across and you study communication and background and then how he influenced the drawing of the obviously.
Well, Eunice was a middle child. Any middle children here? So middle children, reputedly, I'm the baby, so I don't know. But middle children often spend a lot of time trying to say, hey, I'm here too, and get their parents' attention. Eunice's life was about trying to get her father's attention. She had her mother's attention. They went to mass together every day. But she couldn't, when she was home, she couldn't get her father's attention. And her whole life was an effort to do that. Yes, there were great letters in her private papers between her and Joe Kennedy. And they're very loving letters. But some of them are heartbreaking. One in particular that I cite at the start of the book brought tears to my eyes, and I am not a particularly sentimental person, as Mark can tell you. You are advising everyone else in that house on their careers, so why not me? She wrote that letter in the late 1950s when Jack was in the Senate and they were gearing up for a presidential run for him. And she had basically hijacked the Kennedy Foundation, the charitable organization that Joe created when Joe Jr. died. And she turned its attention exclusively to issues of intellectual disabilities. And she spent millions of his dollars giving grants to Stanford and the University of Wisconsin and Harvard and Johns Hopkins to try to get to the bottom of what was causing intellectual disabilities in children. And for all of that work that she did, and she volunteered in a federal penitentiary in West Virginia, which is where she met the spy. She worked in a juvenile delinquency home in Chicago. She did all of this work, and it just didn't catch his eye at all. And finally, I would say about he and she, that it is no accident that, to me, and I'm her biography, so I get to think, that he had a stroke in December of 1961, and in September of 1962, Eunice wrote an article for Saturday Evening Post in which she outed her sister as having what we then called mental retardation. So in those ensuing months, she convinced President Kennedy that it was time to tell the truth, although of course they never told the whole truth. It was always partial truths. So we didn't know that Rosemary had been lobotomized. We just knew that she had been born with intellectual disabilities. So for me, Joe Kennedy had to lose his voice because he could no longer talk after he had a stroke for Eunice to find her.
I wonder if you could talk a little bit more about the relationship with Rosemary. I mean, obviously it was tremendously influential in terms of her work, but I was really struck with how much the mother insisted that she take care of her sister.
She essentially assigned her to Eunice, Rosemary to Eunice. Rosemary was not as intellectually disabled as she is sometimes portrayed. Her schoolwork is on file at the Kennedy Library. She looks to have gotten to about a 4th grade level. She could do long division, for instance. I still can't. She could print. She couldn't write cursive, but she could print letters and did to her parents. She was presented at court in London when she was a young woman. She was the most beautiful of the Kennedy sisters. She was able to chat socially with people without being conspicuously identified as a person with disabilities. So her needs were real, and Eunice was assigned to her. She had trouble with coordination. Eunice cut out her food. That meant that Eunice sat at the children's table, while brothers and sisters she admired and wanted to be with, Joe and Kick and Jack, were at the grown-up table. And she was consigned there all of her life, and I think that was a frustration for her. She loved Rosemary dearly. Rosemary disappeared when she was 23 years old, when Joe had her lobotomized and she was institutionalized, and instructed the children that they were not to see her, ever, because according to Joe, the doctors advised that the competitive atmosphere of the Kennedy siblings would be not good for her health. I don't know why he chose to instruct them, but I do believe that the fact that she abided by her father's wishes for so long haunted her, because she knew it wasn't right to have abandoned her sister, which is what essentially they all did. It's interesting, what makes her such an interesting subject to me is she's not easy. She's really complicated in the way she looks at the world. Even in the eulogy she gave for Rosemary, when Rosemary died in 2005, she complained bitterly. Oh, I would have won so many more races against Jack if I hadn't had to take Rosemary on his stroke. Oh my God, the woman's dead. Can we let her up? I think, but that was her nature. She was incredibly competitive. Vicki Kennedy told me a hilarious story that didn't make the book. She didn't know how to sail when she married Ted, and learned how in the early 2000s how to sail, and was thrilled one day when she won a race. So Eunice said, I'll give you the party, we'll have a party at my house, we'll have a party at my house. And so they go off to Atlantic Avenue to Eunice's house, and she's taken the entire dining room table and covered it with every single trophy she ever won. And there's hundreds of them. And Vicki said, and I come in with my little cup. And she says, oh, you can put it right there, dear, right there, right over there. She was a competitive girl. And even at Rosemary's death, still had a little bit of resentment that she got that assignment.
Yes.
I was curious, I think I heard you say that if resources had been available when Rosemary was young, her parents would have made use of them. That somehow find a little jarring that they were so, that Rose was kind of absent and Joe was incredibly concerned with appearances. Would they really have had the emotional wisdom and character to make use of public resources for Rosemary?
Yeah, I mean, they had the resources to make use of every private service that was available, and they did. Rosemary, but what that amounted to was sending Rosemary away to residential schools that really were experimental and tested what they were doing. So Rosemary bounced around to a lot of residential schools, and starting at a very young age. She was only 11, I think, when they first sent her away. They tried. The resources weren't there. I mean, I think they loved all their children. Families are complicated. I mean, aren't you have a kind of complicated relationship with your parents? I mean, I don't think that Joe and Rosemary failed to love their children. And I think they would have done anything for Rosemary if they could have. And, you know, in the dark, scary version of Joe Kennedy, he lobotomized Rosemary and get her out of the way so that we could promote Jack. I just can't accept that, because I've read his letters to Rosemary and hers to him. He loved his daughter. He thought it would work. And the thing about Rosemary is we don't really know her full story, because at the Kennedy Library there are all these pink slips in the archives, and those indicate that material has been removed by the family for privacy reasons. And lots of those things that have been removed are her medical records. At some point those will be restored. They weren't destroyed, they were just removed. And I think after Jean's passing, but Jane Kennedy Smith, I mean, she's the last surviving member of that generation. I think the next generation may understand that history demands that the personal privacy they were trying to protect it needs to be trumped by history. I hope that that's what will happen. But I don't think he lobotomized her for nefarious reasons. I think she had mental illness that compounded her intellectual disabilities, and that did not emerge until she was in late adolescence and young womanhood. And that's what he was trying to fix. She had terrible rages where she hit everybody.